Well, here we are.
I feel like we need a really upbeat, peppy intro, but that just
This
wouldn't be
is.
authentic.
We are there. Because honestly, we've been trying to record an episode on this subject for a long time. And I feel like
About
the reason we
five
haven't,
months. Yeah.
yeah, like a month.
Mm.
And it's interesting that I've felt at different times like I can't talk about that today. Like I'm not in that place. Which is interesting. And that today we feel we are, both
Mm.
of
So I,
us.
I suggested it today and you said yes very easily. So
Yeah.
what was it in you then that today was like, yes, today is the day I can talk about joy?
I guess I'm connected to that part of me at the moment, which is not to say that I'm not at other weeks, because it's not like I'm in despair most of the time or anything. But I guess there's a little bit more lightness to my mood at the moment. It's sunny out too, so that helps. You?
Um, Me, I just feel like I'm in quite a good mood today in general for a while now, actually. I think my mood has just felt. I tell you as well, what made me think about joy again was I think a couple of weeks ago, I talk about it in my book and I've sort of alluded to it in a few places that I use this Rallick method sometimes to check in with how I'm feeling. And I pretty much only use it when I'm struggling or I'm not feeling great or something like that. And I was in bed a couple of weeks ago meditating and I thought I'll just go through the Rallick now and just kind of check in with where I'm at now. And when I got to the point in it where I identify what I'm feeling and I just sit there going, I recognize I'm feeling. And I just felt this swelling feeling up in me. And this word came out, it was like joy. And then I just started crying with joy in
Yeah.
the middle of my meditation. And
Hmm.
I was like, this is interesting. I don't check in with my feelings as much when everything seems to be
Yeah.
fine or good compared to when something feels off or I don't feel great. And that is something I'm looking to rectify.
Yeah. That reminds me of like glimmer tracking because
Mhm.
it's being intentional about being with feelings when they're and exploring them or just even noticing them when we're happier, joyful,
Mhm.
whatever the spectrum of that is, and the value of that and how that can be very influential on our baseline. I'm trying to get away from talking about nervous system so much, to be quite honest with you, because I love it. I fully espouse it. It is, but I also want to not over does I think there's a lot of ways of talking about things. So um concept remains just maybe trying to broaden the language. But yeah, I feel like my baseline happiness, I'm going to say happiness instead of window of tolerance, or, safety, has broadened by paying attention to moments of happiness or of joy or of ease. It really has changed it.
I think previously I didn't really relate to the word joy because I think I've always equated joy with excitement,
Mm.
high energy. And
Ah,
that's why I've always been a bit more like, oh, I'm not sure about joy as a word that I would really use, but I think it's just shifted a bit and broadened in meaning.
yeah.
I think for me,
Oh, let's
probably
look it
because
up.
it's been around for the last 5 months in my consciousness about at some point we're going to talk about it on the podcast. And we spoke about it in one of our community meetings. If you want to join our community, details below. We asked our community members to share what brought them joy. And it was really lovely. It really lifted the mood
Yeah.
of the whole group, didn't it? Just people talking about things that gave them
Hmm.
just now I'm feeling like I keep saying the word joy over and over again. But
It's
pets came
relevant.
up a lot. Pets came up.
Yeah.
That's one. What else was coming up? It was really, when I say simple things,
Mm. Hmm.
just simple things, a lot
Simple
of the
things.
simple things. Yeah.
Yes. When I was going to say, whenever I picture joy, when I hear the word, I picture Jack and Jill rolling down a hill. I don't know why. I see a grassy knoll and two kids rolling
JFK.
down it. That's what and I have no access to things like that. But joy has taken on a different meaning for me, and it is more the subtleties, like that I can find it today. I will find it today at some pocket of my day, and it makes it a lot more accessible than the kind of joy that I would think of as excitement. That maybe comes once in a while. What it is, besides like pets or something. I mean, I can tell you. Can I tell you the way? I think I have talked to us all about the way that I've the sunlight on my arm. That story.
It's not
Okay.
ringing a bell. Go on.
All right. So when I first started paying attention to this feeling, I was driving out of my driveway and it was in sometime in April. And it was one of those, when the winter's starting to thaw and like you step outside and it's like, oh, it's cold, I need a coat. Like you have to have a coat on to step outside. It was one of those days where you kind of maybe were starting to not need that. Like it wasn't such an abrasive shock when you stepped outside. And I was in my car and I was driving down the street to get out of my neighborhood, and the sunlight was coming through the window and landing on my arm, and it was warming up my forearm. And I was like, because I love the warm weather, I love the onset of summer. I wait for it. And then, it was like, oh, like it was this it was more than joy. It was like hope, but which I think is part of joy for me. And I just had this moment of like, everything's going to be okay. Like that's just what it felt like. And I never forgot it. Like that to me, I was like, that's what joy is. That's like the best I feel is when I'm in a moment like that, which I'll also sometimes get from spending time with friends, like the connecting. Our community calls sometimes these podcast recordings leave me with that feeling of like being connected. It's just like everything's all right. Like with a big, like a smile, like that to me is joy. And I started to think about how that's what I want more of in my life. It's not rolling down grassy knolls. It's not big parties or even big vacations. It's just those small moments of feeling that way every day. I live for that. That's what makes life hopeful. So I started to consider joy in that, in those kind of moments.
A good friend of mine, her capacity for joy is, it just makes her a delight to be around. I took her for a walk up St. Catherine's Hill near where I am, and she stopped to look at this heather, this purple heather. And she was like, wow, look at this heather. And I was excited because I knew that when we got like 10 minutes further along, it opens up and then it's
Mm,
this whole sprawling of purple. And I was so excited for her to see it. And of course, when she got there, like she was beside herself with excitement. And I guess there's something about the expression of that kind of joy previously has left me judging my more, what feels like a more muted joy,
mm,
because I don't know if I've ever react behaviorally like that
yeah.
over. I have seen incredible, even sometimes just a tree. It doesn't even have to be that incredible. There used to be, when I lived in Ealing, I lived on a road called Grange Road, and there was this huge tree. To me, it just looked like a magical tree. I can't even tell you why. It wasn't a different type of tree to the others. And when the leaves changed and they went yellow, there'd be a certain time I'd walk down the street and the sun would be behind it. And the beauty of it was just
Yeah.
magnificent. Have you ever had it though, when you're with somebody and you see something like that and you're just like, wow, and you're like,
Yes.
look at that
I do
tree,
that with my kids.
and they're like, yeah, and they're like, yeah, okay, and they just don't feel it as well. And then I'm like, man, I want you to see and feel what I see and feel.
It's such a buzzkill when they don't. I do that with my kids. There's a street near me that's just the most, you wouldn't think you were in New Jersey. Although New Jersey's beautiful, but it's just this. And I'm always like, guys, look at that. Look at that sunset. And my kids are like, yeah. Like, just like, what's for dinner? And it's like how you're just, but to be fair, I was going to say when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily appreciate that as much, but also I didn't appreciate that much when I was depressed. And when I was even just, I don't know that I had access to that much pre-recovery. Like
Mm.
I don't think I did. And I used to there was this girl in my OT program who used to find joy from nature every day. Like she'd walk in every day. And I just had lunch with her last month and she still does this. Like she's like, the tree, like, and I would be like, you are just a different brand of person. I don't have this in me. I don't care about a tree. I couldn't identify. And now I can more, but I'm still not behaviorally like that. To your point, it's just more internal to me, which is fine. I feel like that's fine. But I didn't really tap into it. To me, it was like, yeah, mm, so, um, so that's interesting too. And I think about that when I think about this conversation, because it's like, well, what if you don't feel like that? What if you don't get that kind of reaction from things that other people get those kinds of reactions from?
I think that was definitely the case, in my disordered eating days. I didn't
Yeah.
care about any of this stuff. I wouldn't notice any of this stuff. Life seemed so dark. Everything was so dark. And do you know what? Let's say you'd put me in front of the most beautiful thing. I can remember being in Tenerife and like this just incredible view, one of my favorite views in Tenerife. And this was right in my binging days. And I remember looking and going like, gosh, if you can't even feel
Mm.
happy here, there's no hope for you.
Yeah.
Like there's no location I can take myself to get me out of this
Yeah.
misery that I was in at that time. So there is something I think about the availability of this, which is not to say I'm trying to think really like during those years, the years that I think of as the dark years, there were, I mean, I want to use the word glimmers, but obviously not in the way that you use. And there were like little, I guess, glimmers of times of, maybe being able to enjoy myself, but it didn't feel carefree, I don't think. Everything was just very
Yeah.
heavy because it felt like life couldn't really get going until I had sorted myself out, as
Yes.
how can I engage with life in the way I want to when I'm so messed up is how I would have been thinking about it.
Yeah. Yes. Like something was heavier on it. I also felt like I can't help it. Vigilant about to pay attention to those small things felt like taking my eye off the ball. To stop and look at a tree and to be like, to take myself out of my head enough to do that was like, no, that's pointless and too slow. I need to be fixing myself. I need to be like, I think I found comfort in ruminating about anything. Like that's just, even if it was low and slow, even if it was depressive, like there was something I was a ruminator, whether it was anxiety or depression. I would just spin in there. I would love to sit in the cocoon of it. And to come out of it felt like, I'm trying to find the right word. Dumb. Like I felt like I just, it was too simple. And part of what I'm thinking about now is like it also requires presence. Like you've got to be present and also more, you've got to be outside of yourself. You've got to be a little bit more zoomed out to be connected to the world around you. And if you are someone, and I was someone who was so zoomed in, so in here, that coming out of it did not feel, it was like being, in my bed, like and I'm like, I'm not coming out. I'm not coming out from under my covers. Like this is where I need to be. So there was, it just, I didn't even want to, I guess. I didn't even want joy. Yeah, it didn't feel, I don't want joy unless I could be recovered.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I wanted joy, but I wanted it on my terms.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yes.
like mess about with this joy thing now when
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
fixing to be done.
I even feel like as I'm reminding myself of this, it was almost like no. It was almost like I was standing up for myself. This is so strange. But it was like I was standing up for myself by being miserable. Like, oh no, 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 no. I'm not gonna be, you know what it reminds me of? That feeling of like the mediocrity of it. It would have been like if I can't have full joy that includes me having a body I want or not binging anymore, then I don't want it. Like, give me it all or don't give me any. And that felt like some kind of empowerment. I know there's people who will write in and be like, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's interesting when you said about the sun on your arm because I had a moment where I was really low, really, really low. And I was stood, it was near Chiswick Park, and there's like a road that leads in, but it's like a really quiet road. There's not really any cars that go down it. And these huge trees, I mean, absolutely, I don't even know what kind of trees they are. Big ones, you know, the big ones,
the big
really
ones,
big ones.
yes,
Yeah.
that's what they're
Yes,
called.
those ones.
Mhm.
So it's probably like, I don't know, 100 meters, 200 meters of these trees, and they're quite close together. And they were yellow, absolutely
Mm.
yellow. And then this huge gust of wind came, and all these leaves came off the tree. And it was like something out of a film.
Yeah.
And they're all like swirling around me like this, and they're just everywhere, and it's all lit up. And it was really magical. And even in my low point, there was something so attention grabbing about this.
Mm.
And I remember having a sense of seasons changing, seasons coming and going. And a little bit like you said with the sun on your arm, it came along with a feeling of like, this is going to be okay. This will pass. You will feel better than you do
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
there was something, so not quite joy, but it was
Mm.
awe,
Hmm.
which I think is very close bedfellows with joy.
Yes. And this was in disorder?
No, but it was in a really, really low,
Or was it
low,
okay?
low
That's fair
spot. But
enough.
it was actually kind of like post eating disorder, but at a time when life was just
When I
really,
was like,
really dark.
I think that's an inroad here because why do I talk about this with flow states, which connects to joy. Even in the most dark times, I'm pretty sure, even in the most dark times I've had, there have been times where I have been caught off guard by it. I actually, now that I think about it, I think it is nature. No, I think it's also been connection, where I've been caught off guard by feeling this way, despite myself. Like it's like I did not get permission for it to happen. It just did. And even though I couldn't sustain it, it's like those little peeks into what provides me with that feeling. To me, like these are the things I wasn't aware then, but like it was kind of like pay attention to those things, whether it's colors or movement or nature or animals or weather, seasons. Like what are the themes between your moments of joy or your flow states? Like it's looking for like what speaks to you despite yourself. And that I think it's not like we go chasing that then. I don't believe in that. I don't think it works. But it's just noticing I am touched by X, Y, or Z. Just naming that, knowing that, and then leaving it alone. That feels because those things continue to be the things that provide me with joy now in much larger doses and with more capacity. But they did exist before. It's just that I couldn't hold on to them.
In the disordered days, I think people were a big part, I guess, of, again, I'm not sure if I would use the word joy because I don't know, joy still feels like it's got a little bit more energy in. But I guess I'd still had times when I had plenty of capacity for connection. And I think as an extrovert, that's important. There'd be times when I didn't, and certainly post binging, like actually when binging, I mean, like I couldn't feel connected to anything. But there were times I think, when you talk about having to be less focused on yourself, you have to zoom out. And I think being around other people helped me do that. I know we've spoken about this before, like there were times when you wouldn't go to things and I would make myself go because I actually knew I would feel better if I went.
Mm. Even as an introvert, we need connection.
Mm.
And I would go and I would, but also, did you ever feel I don't know if you ever felt this way, but I used to feel like I don't want it because I don't want to lose it. Like I don't want something that makes me feel good because it's just bound to go away.
Oh no, I don't think.
I still have that thought sometimes. Like driving down that road. There's a road near me. It's the most beautiful road ever. It's the one I'm talking about earlier. I
Mhm.
love this freaking road. Like I can't even tell you how much I love this road. Have I pointed out to you when you were here? I think
No,
I
I don't
did
think you
once. I
did.
think I was like, this is the most beautiful road. You'd
Oh,
be
right.
like,
And I was probably like,
yeah.
oh, that's nice.
Anyone who visits,
Sorry,
I make
Steph.
a point of driving down this road. It is beautiful.
I'm going to
But
make a point of properly admiring it next time I
I'm gonna
come.
make you.
Yeah.
Um, but even now, when I drive, it's beautiful in all seasons, except like winter is the least, but fall when it's yellow and orange and red, and spring when it's becoming green and pink. And then in summer, it's just lush green. And every time I'm enjoying it, I'm like, it's only a few more months or like a few more weeks. Like there's always this feeling of it's going to go. I now understand. I'm like, that's okay. It'll make room for the gold. Like I have more appreciation of how beauty can change and how joy can change and how we can experience it in different ways. And I'm not afraid of the loss because I also trust the gain or the presence of something more in the absence of it. Um, but there is that feeling or thought of it's going to go away. Better not get too comfortable.
Just had another moment pop into my head when you and I were driving to Brighton because it was the first proper drive I'd done with my car with the roof down. We were playing like summer reggae music, which isn't
Yes.
necessarily my usual go-to, but it just felt right that day from a sensory perspective and like just the excitement of where we were going and everything about that for me just felt that's the best drive I think I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, you said you reflected on that day and I could feel
Mm.
it. Like
Mm.
you were in it. You were embodied that day, that drive.
For somebody listening to this who perhaps they think about their lives and I don't know where I find joy, do you think joy is something that makes sense for us to actively seek out?
I'm sure the answer is different for everyone, but that's what I mean. I can't chase something.
Mm.
Then it's fraudulent. But I think that I can notice, I can offer myself more opportunity for it, which would include being around people. Because if you find joy in connection, which I think we just do as social as humans, even if the defenses are in front of it, giving ourselves opportunity to experience it and putting ourselves in positions where we might. is useful.
For me, and again, I don't know how the word lands with everybody else, but because it feels like a big word, I think if I was in a place where I was feeling, I say I just wasn't feeling great most of the time, the word joy probably wouldn't be helpful because if I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the scale of what we think of as
Hmm.
positive emotion versus like the harder emotions, it might be more like, I don't know, moments of ease,
Yeah.
or I'm not sure if you're so much of a fan of the word, but even for me, moments of peace, I could find
Mm.
little pockets of peace.
You think I
Um,
don't like that word? I quite
we
do.
did early on, we had a thing where you were like, I
Yeah, I
don't
must
trust
have.
peace. I don't trust peace.
Oh,
And
that
then
might be
when,
what I was just talking about. Um,
yeah, but then actually
mm,
when we switched it around to safety, like when I use the word peace,
uh,
I think it's your safety. I think it's the
yeah,
same thing.
that's evolved for me as well. Peace, I can completely that I have no problem with peace now. But
Yeah.
your point is good. Like, let's also offer words that might fall under the umbrella of joy. Like, we don't need to just talk about joy. That's not the point. I think what we're looking for is a feeling that feels good. And it could be awe. I think that's a good one. It's awe. That can be quiet, reverence, peace, ease, safety. Safety can be
Mm.
a version of
Yes.
joy.
I think gratitude as well, like
Mm.
appreciation maybe is a bit nicer than that. Appreciation, I think, comes under the same banner. I just got the thesaurus up. We've got
Me too.
gladness. Got see, this is when it's saying things like exhilaration,
Right.
jubilation, exultation. Those are
Too
the kind
big.
of words that I would normally associate with joy.
When do you have that?
When do I have that? Exhilaration, jubilation. I don't know
I
that
know
I
it's so
do.
rare.
Yeah, it is rare. It has to be something really big. It's also the kind of thing for me because they are so activating. For me, I
Hmm.
imagine that there's always going to be a come down from that.
Yeah. That's where a binge, I had a post somewhere like, why do I binge when I'm happy? But
Hmm.
I meant like excited because there is that transition of the energy. Ah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Again.
that's fine. There's you just do own it, girl. I don't know why I called you girl. That was weird. I didn't like it.
I liked it.
Okay. It sounds girl sounds really rubbish in a British accent. When you guys say girl,
That's, I think,
it
why I
just
liked it.
it
It's like,
sounds
oh, it's
like
so cute.
girl.
Girl. Like if I say a spot of tea.
That sounds fine.
No. Spot of tea. Okay. Um, wait, go ahead. What was your exuberant joy?
Um,
It has to be big, you said, and there's a letdown.
yes, because there's always contrast, right, with emotions. So with something that I don't know, let's say you've been really anxious or you've been ill or something like that and you haven't been feeling good and then you just feel normal again, you feel great because it's like a comparative thing.
Yes, yes.
And so if we're going high up to like jubilation, that kind of excitement,
Yeah.
then when you come to normal, it's going to feel like a downer.
Yes.
I don't think it's possible to stay in that
Hmm.
state or even necessarily desirable to stay in that higher state of that.
Oh, okay. I see that, but I'm actually thinking about when the last time I felt the like delight, exuberance was, and it might have actually been recently, but I don't know the time before that. But when I went on when I was on vacation at the beach this summer, and we went to an amusement park, and my kids are finally of an age where they want to go on faster rides. and and especially my 7-year-old is like all about it. And we went on a roller coaster and the Gravitron. Have you been? Do you have the Gravitron, the one that spins and spins? I haven't been on this since I was a kid, and I was laughing. I was like, I couldn't help myself from laughing. And it was so playful. It was just joy and play. It was exuberance. I was so, and I don't think there was a come down. I think it was like, I just, it was great. And then when it was done, I was like, that was great. And then it just, I guess it filled my next moments with more of the, more of this softer joy, like more of the contentment. I didn't notice a come down.
Mhm. The last time actually I probably felt that kind of exuberance would have been a couple of weeks ago when I was out in Benidorm and the band started playing Green Day. So I
Yeah.
think I do feel it when I'm somewhere and they play a song that I really
Yeah.
love, that I
That's a
can
good
sing
one.
along to and jump around
Mm.
to. Absolutely. Is there a come down? Yes, because I'm exhausted the next day. I have to pay for it because my poor body just can't take it.
Yeah. I like these examples of what brings us these things.
Mhm.
What else
But
does?
that energy as well is fueled by alcohol. So I'm not saying that I'm not saying I'm really drunk or anything like that, but I've had a couple of wines, which is loosening something up. Would
Yeah,
I be as excited? I'm someone who'll dance sober. If there's a song I like, I'll get up and I'll dance sober.
not me.
Does that go up a notch if I've had a drink or two? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Well, that's why we drink. That's why some people drink
Mhm.
is to access that. I
Yeah.
think that's why I do it. I mean, I think for a song I could find that without alcohol, but for dancing I can't. But if I drink alcohol, I can, and then it's like great. And I mean, this is part of the appeal.
Yeah, but that comes with a price,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
and that's I think the flip
Well,
side
maybe
of
there's a
something
sweet
like that.
spot. I think there's a sweet spot.
I'm sure there must be. I just don't know that I'd found it.
Really? I feel like if I have like a drink,
Oh no,
two
yeah, no, with
tops.
alcohol I've got a sweet spot. I thought just the idea of a sweet spot of this
Oh,
kind of high energy emotion where you don't get the crash. I don't think so.
oh, I feel like I had it on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
It was good. It was also like I'm ready to be done because that's a lot of activate. Maybe that's why it was like I reached my threshold probably of capacity for it, and then I was like happy to come down. I don't know. I think that like because I'm thinking now back to times where I would what I would have called exuberant, joyful, and there was an attachment to something else that was part of the come down. Like I used to get that way when I'm really going back, but when my crush would call me or like when I would find out that the guy I wanted to invite me to the prom, this is going back to 1997 because I wasn't asking him at the time, asked me to the prom and I was so thrilled. But there was a come down after stuff like that because it was also a joy that was connected to something I was attached to. It was like not pure. It was my acceptance and my like the way that we can might feel that way if we lose weight, or like
Mhm.
step on a scale and reach a certain number that we've the goal weight, that to me wasn't a I would feel that level of adrenaline or whatever it is and happiness, but it wasn't this authentic kind because it was conditional.
Mhm.
It was like you couldn't necessarily repeat it or couldn't count on it.
And the loss of it, or for it to no longer be the case, causes a lot of
Yeah.
upset. Whereas
Yeah.
it sounded like when you had your roller coaster ride, you weren't
Right.
really upset that it was over. You were like, actually, no, I feel
Yeah.
kind of satisfied.
Yes. Yes. That's an interesting angle because how many of us are equating happiness or joy or whatever to or safety to things that provide us with conditional happiness,
Mhm. Mhm. How many of us, Steph? Do you reckon?
59%.
Percent or people?
Because I was thinking people and then I was like,
Yeah.
that'd be cool. No,
That's not a lot, considering we have
no.
tens of thousands of listeners.
Yes, sorry. It was the number that came out.
I felt that really high level of excitement when that YouTube video I did at the beginning of the year blew
Mm,
up. And that was absolutely a double-edged sword.
yeah.
It was really exciting and really stressful at the same time. And there was a whole come down after that and all of that. And it just
Yeah.
sounds, I mean, I'm not really adding anything to the conversation here, just giving another
Well,
example of that. That was
yeah.
excitement. And I think excitement and joy, I
Mm,
always thought of as the same thing. And I think it's behooves me to separate them.
mm-hmm. I hear you. I have a client who just got this promotion that she's been wanting for so long. And she said something like, I got it. She was so excited. And then a couple days later, she was like, there's this thing, there's this, it's not like, and I remember when I reached a certain amount of followers on Instagram, it was like that. It's these kinds, I think that's an interesting joy when it's connected to what is not the same as joy when it's connected to like what? Like roller coaster joy versus YouTube viral
It's,
video joy, you know?
it's a boring word, but there's the word that's coming into my mind. There's something about stability
Mm.
that's part of it. There's also for me, and again, this is just more like an instinct than a scientific thing, but it's almost like if I feel like it's hooking into my dopamine
Yeah.
system, that is a
Ego.
different kind of excitement. Yeah, ego's all part of that too.
Yeah.
It's hooking into a different part of me.
Yes.
It's like, yes, it's exciting, but it's not satisfying.
Yes. Yes. This is very interesting.
Well, we're finding it interesting. I hope the
I
listeners are
know. I
too.
am. It's okay.
I'm, I'm getting joy out of this
I
conversation.
am. I think it's a really fascinating conceptualization of it. Like ego or dopamine related joy versus unconditional. I don't know what the other would be.
Yeah, what is the other? It's easier to identify what the one is that doesn't feel as good or as
It
there's a
almost feels
crash after.
existential. Like roller coaster, connection, nature, movement, music, they're connected to something that has nothing to do with me necessarily. I'm experiencing it, but it's not me. Whereas the other ones were about me, like my Instagram count, my crush liking me.
Mhm.
There's something bigger than me involved in the other kinds.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point and a good way of putting it.
Maybe we find joy, happiness, whatever through that, like through the things that are bigger than us, through the way that we're part of the world. When we understand that the world is bigger than us and we have access to like that's where that existential stuff feels true. So I think you could also feel that in despair, you know,
Feel what? Feel which?
existential despair, like when you realize like the flip side of it on
Hmm.
but that's the difference between being like, oh, I lost my job, I feel low versus we're all gonna die. You know, like, like that's a different kind. One is about you and one is about like something more than you, but on the other side of it.
But I think the idea of attachment as well that you mentioned is interesting. It's almost anything that, I don't know, feels joyful that then you want to cling to becomes fragile.
Yes. Right.
So whether that's about a YouTube video or a crush or whatever it might be, when you cling to an outcome.
Yeah. Yes. Man, that was a rush. Here's a journal prompt. Just one day we were also supposed to do an episode on letting go of the past.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? And I was like,
Hmm.
no,
Hmm.
it's related to this crush. Okay. Number 9 journal prompt on this website called wondermind.com says, how do you talk to yourself when you're happy? How do you talk to yourself when you're unhappy? Do you notice any similarities or differences? And I think that's an interesting question.
Mm.
Happy, joyful, whatever. You know, I don't think I talk to myself
Yeah, just
actually in
thinking.
those moments. But when I'm unhappy, I do, which is interesting. It's like in one maybe we're in the body. We're more embodied instead of in our heads.
Maybe, yeah, when feeling happy, I might be talking to myself as in like having thoughts about the situation, but I'm probably not talking to myself about myself. If
Mm,
I'm making it mean something about myself, then we're slipping into the what
yeah.
we were talking about, the other side of it, the flip side. On to the next prompt.
Who are the people who make you happiest? How are your relationships with those people right now? Which is an interesting place to take it.
Yeah.
Because it invites the question, like, do we even have, like, how often are we spending time with people who,
That is funny. I think I don't know if I mentioned this to you on the podcast or there was a few weeks ago when my dad was getting something out of the car or something. And I was looking at him and I was just having a moment of warmth towards
mm,
him, you know, just a feeling
mm-hmm,
of warmth. And he saw me looking at him and he goes, "What?" I was like, really sorry. He goes, "What?" And I was like, "Nothing." And he's like, "Why are you looking at me like that?" And I was like, "Nothing." We were out for a walk a couple of weeks ago and it was just a similar moment. He was picking some blackberries and eating these blackberries off the bush. And I just had a moment of like, again, like looking at him, just enjoying seeing him having that moment, taking the blackberries off. He saw me looking. He's like, "What?" And so this time I'm like, I'm just calling it.
yeah.
I said I was just feeling a moment of warmth for you. And then just turned around and carried on walking. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep calling it out now. So I'm not having this.
You're
The
like, I
first
got to
time
get out
I
of here.
felt,
Those vulnerable to me. What
no,
would he
it
have
wasn't
said?
actually. It was just giving him a chance not to have to react.
What did he do?
He didn't say anything.
Oh, do you think he
But it
was
was
touched?
interesting because the first time when I said it, I felt really defensive at his response. So I was like, screw
Oh,
you. Am I going to tell you that I was having a moment where I was
because
having
now
some
it's
nice
gone.
thoughts about you? Yeah, it's totally gone. But this time I just leaned into it and I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't see how he wouldn't have liked that. Like,
Yeah.
who wouldn't like
Oh, yeah,
that?
yeah, I
And
know.
so I'm like, I'm just going to carry on doing it. When I have that moment, I'm just going to stare at him in a weird way,
You're like warmth.
provoke him. And then I'm going to say, look, I'm just loving on you. If you don't like it, you
Hmm.
can
Oh, that's
Mhm.
really sweet. Would that make him feel uncomfortable?
I don't know that it would make him feel uncomfortable. I don't know that I've ever seen my dad feel uncomfortable. I don't know that he would necessarily know. I
How to
say know what
respond?
to say or even feel like he
Mm,
needs to say anything.
okay.
It's just the only time we tend to say thoughtful, nice things to each other is in cards.
Mm,
So he'll always pick a thoughtful card and write something nice in the card, and I do the same.
mm.
But those kinds of verbal
Interesting.
conversations have just not been the pattern for us.
Yeah.
But I'm
I,
leaning into it a little bit more, and I want to.
I think that's wonderful and could probably provide opportunities for what we're talking about, like that feeling.
Mhm.
I don't have an easy time telling people when I'm feeling warmly. I'm really vulnerable. I feel very vulnerable to that with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
It's changing. And when it does, I feel so good.
Mhm.
Like in the places where I do have access to it, which I find is easier with like for sure my kids. That's the only place that I can do it because I made sure to change that relationship with them. But I have a hard time with Mike, definitely with my parents, 100%. I don't think I could say it. But I tried it recently with my sister and it was
How'd it go?
nice.
Ah.
So, oh my gosh, that's a whole nother podcast episode. My sister and I have a very complicated relationship.
Mhm.
And I've done some things differently recently that are completely different. One of which is just communicating love, which is so even hard for me to say, but like, and
I could see that.
but I did. I went there and it was very uncomfortable. But then once I broke through that, it was nice and it was
Mhm.
freeing. And I felt like, like I didn't realize how much I was holding on to by not
Yeah.
until, and then you get past that like dam and you're like, oh gosh. And now I feel like invited to do it more. Now I kind of want to overdo it. Like I got it
You got
back.
some years to make up on.
Um, but it made me feel this kind of warmth and connection that brought me joy and brought tears to my eyes. I didn't cry, but it's just like that emotion, which, I was like, oh, how long was I blocking? How much am I blocking in my defenses?
Mhm.
Essentially, I think that's pretty much it. Like I think we can be blocking joy a lot through our defenses, which is not a conscious choice we're making, but that this happens.
Yeah. I used to feel so vulnerable about complimenting people. I would never say anything
Mm,
complimentary to anyone. Not because I felt like I was deliberately withholding, but because I just felt kind of silly
mm,
when
mm.
I did it. I'd hear my voice would sound strange and weird. And this was kind of quite a while ago. I've been much better, I think, in the last decade, but pushing through that because I also know how much verbal acknowledgement means to me as a words of affirmation person. I'm like,
Yeah,
come on,
same.
Sarah, you got to give what you need. You got to give what you need.
Yes.
Just practicing and pushing into that and saying that to people. It just wouldn't have occurred to me. I would have thought it about them. It just wouldn't have occurred to me to say it out
Yeah.
loud. It never at the time felt like a deliberate withholding, but actually moving into it and doing it to begin with, I felt weird and self-conscious.
Mm.
I think I could be better at it.
I think this is interesting too. Talk about like how we might invite joy in this way. It's
Yeah.
actually like moving into discomfort in a way.
Mm, just as
I
submit
just realized
yourself.
how hungry I am, and it makes me feel a little bit happy. Like I'm gonna eat lunch soon.
Okay. I think it makes me happy because it's good to be hungry and not
No, come
not
on.
eat when you're hungry.
No, I'm excited to have my food is sometimes joyful.
All right then. Well, um, go joyfully.
That's it. I have nothing to add.
Yeah. Right.